What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the, what is this, Week 12 edition of the Sunday Night Football Show here on Rotogrinders. I am Britt Devine, pumped to be on with my man Keith. Keith, we're gonna have we're gonna be butting heads a little bit today. We'll get to that in a minute, but a fun day in fantasy. We see Tyreek Hill having a historic day. I don't think we're gonna see anything like that in tonight's game.
No, I don't think so. Going to be a lot more defense. Yeah, just excited to see if my Bears can hang in there for a little bit. I'm not expecting them to win, but hopefully they can keep it close.
Oh, sorry for a Bears fan. If only Mahomes, right? Imagine
Yeah, right.
what life would be like with Patrick Mahomes.
Oh man, it makes me sick to even
Allen
think.
Robinson would be the best wide receiver in the league if he had Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
Sorry for that. What do you think? Think they're just going to can everybody at the end of the season?
I don't see any way that they can give them another chance to get quarterback right. I think. I mean, if it was a situation where they kept pace on and let Nagy go to try to justify some sort of change, maybe that. But I'd prefer to see them both go.
Mm-hmm. All right. I see a lot of you guys talking in chat. Chat looks pretty active today. There's a lot of you watching. Feel free to participate with us through the show. It's interactive. I got my eyes on it over here. If you got any questions, shoot them at me. We can talk props. We can talk game spread. We can talk DFS, whatever you want to talk about tonight. We can kind of give you our input on it. And also, I can bring up the expert survey, see what everybody had on there, including Keith, who does that every single week. But yeah, Keith, let's talk about tonight. I'm going to start on DraftKings. I like to talk about DraftKings first because I think there's a little bit more strategy out there tonight. And I guess I want to start with the captain spot, of course. And, you know, you can make Davante Adams captain lineups, but you pretty much have to concede two, if not maybe three spots, depending on what you do with the, your other like main two spots, whether you go Rodgers and Allen Robinson or Trubisky. And if you play Adams with both quarterbacks, the lineups, it's really hard to get different because there's only so many choices you can actually make in those. And being different in the, if you're playing the extremely large field contest is something you should try to strive for every now and then with some lineups. What are we doing in the captain spot tonight? Because if you plug in Davante Adams, you're only left right, with $6,200 per spot on DraftKings, and that gets pretty tight down there. What's your captain exposure to Davante Adams looking like?
It's probably going to be about half the field. I'm expecting the field to have him at about 20%. I think he will be the most popular captain. But being a Bears fan and watching all of their games and then looking at stats and seeing what they've done against opposing offenses this year, wide receiver, especially wide receiver one and quarterbacks really struggle against the Bears defense. So I'm probably going to be about half the field on Davante and the captain, and even less than that in the flex.
So who are if you're not playing Davante, who looks to be a big game, and I want to note too, I think there is some wide receiver talk we got to have with the Packers at the top of the show here because we have MVS, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He's in. And I think the average person, myself included, I was expecting him to be out tonight. And we were all going to jam in Allen Lazard, and it was going to be a touchdown party. And now we really can't do that. How are you sort of handling that as well? Because I mentioned to you pre-show, MVS, right? One, he's expensive, and two, anybody who made a lineup, people make these at 4 o'clock, right? And they don't really go back and change them sometimes, specifically for the Showdown slates. His ownership's going to be pretty low. What do you think about throwing him into the mix maybe a little bit more in the field? I'll take, in the large GPP on DraftKings, I'll take the hard under on his 17.8 ownership percentage.
Yeah, I agree. And it's the price tag that makes that number seem a little bit too high. And plus the fact that most of us thought he was going to miss. Ownership is the only reason I'd be interested in him, though. I'll have zero Allen Lazard if he's going to come in higher owned than Valdes-Scantling, and that might get updated now that we have official actives and inactives. I could see that shifting kind of in the other direction. But if he's going to stay around 20%, then yeah, I don't mind taking a couple stabs at him.
All right. So if Adams isn't, is he your highest captain, or is there someone else you got in more captain lineups than him?
No, I'm going to go the Aaron Jones route.
All right. Here, let's start duking it out.
All right. Um, just the Bears have given up more production on the ground than they have through the air. Um, Aaron Jones receives passing game work as well. So even if he's having trouble getting off on the ground, I think they can go to him in the air. I know Jamal Williams cuts into the workload a little bit, but we've seen Jones go off for 3, even 4 touchdown games before.
Mm-hmm.
He's just an incredibly talented back, and I think that's the way that the Packers get it done tonight.
Yeah, I'm just a little worried. I mean, the Bears, no joke, through the air, through the ground, they are a very tough defense. There is a big missing key for the Bears tonight, though, and that is Akins, his the big nose tackle there for the Bears.
Yeah,
That's going to possibly create a couple more running lanes out there, and I was pretty adamant. I have basically no Aaron Jones exposure right now in any of the lineups I made today. He was my hard fade. How I'm getting different than what I feel the field's going to do. I'm just worried about too many things. One, I think this is more of a defensive game on both sides. I think the Packers might have a little bit of trouble moving the ball against Chicago, and then Chicago, not so much because of the Packers defense, but because of their quarterback situation, might have a little trouble moving the ball out there. So, and then I'm just always worried, right? Like, he gets the receptions, which on DraftKings always help. But, earlier in the season, it was 18, 16, 16, 15. Now it was 10 and 13 and 10. Jamal Williams hangs around too much. I don't know. I'm getting a little tired of playing Aaron Jones and only getting, I don't know, maybe 14 touches total or something like that in the game tonight. So that was my particular stance. I will say I have softened on that a little bit. And between when the show ends and when the games kick off, I will put Aaron Jones into a lineup or two because of Akins being out. I think that's a big boost for Aaron Jones, but I did want to note that I think we have two very different stances on this game. Mine is more my teams look more maybe a little more defensive, a little bit more passing game, and a little bit less of the running game on both sides is sort of how I'm handling it tonight. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that Rodgers is going to go out there and get held to less than 200 yards or anything. I think he'll still find some success. It's just I see Adams. They're really going to add additional help over the top, and I don't think he's going to have the big explosion game to where he can pay off the price. So I see something like 7 receptions for 80 yards and maybe even a touchdown,
mm-hmm.
and I still think that Aaron Jones can outproduce that.
Marcus in chat, he says both greenbacks tonight in the optimal. I don't know. I mean, there's all different sorts of projections tonight, but do you think overall lineup construction, more for the tournament side, it works simply because Jamal Williams is just so cheap, and there's very few options that cheap that are even guaranteed to touch the ball, let alone touch the ball multiple times in the game like Jamal Williams is tonight. Do you have a lot of lineups with both running backs in there? Do you think you can do that tonight?
I think you can do it, and especially in a cash game, I think it makes a ton of sense because you're playing more for floor.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, Williams is on the field; he's going to see some touches, and the price is great. So yeah, definitely in a cash game you can do that. In a tournament, when I have Aaron Jones in the captain, a Jamal Williams touchdown would crush his ceiling game.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not doing it with Aaron Jones and the captain, but I do not mind it if they're both in the flex.
All right, and then we haven't talked at all about Aaron Rodgers captain lineups. What do those look like generally? I think it's like, can you make an Aaron Rodgers captain lineup without Devontae Adams? The problem, it just eats up so much of your salary if you start pairing those two together. How do you get different? All your builds start to look like everyone else doing the same thing tonight. How are you playing Aaron Rodgers? I would probably play Devontae Adams with my Aaron Rodgers captain teams and try to get wonky in one other spot. Maybe I don't play either of the wide receivers and I try to bink a Tanyan TD or something like that, or a Jamal Williams reception touchdown for cheap in them. But what's your captain exposure to Aaron? Aaron Rodgers at home, I don't care who it's against, is generally a really good play.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think if you're playing Rodgers and the captain, you have to fade Adams because if Adams is getting there to pay off that price, then it's likely that I mean, there's not going to be a ton of production
Mm-hmm.
outside of what went to Adams to get there. So I don't love Adams in the flex at all, and that's why I'm going to be way underweight on him. I'm also going to be underweight on Rodgers in the captain, and I'm just shifting that over to Aaron Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Tanyan call, if you have Aaron Rodgers in the captain, it's you're hoping that Tanyan catches two and somebody like MVS catches the other one,
Mm-hmm.
and he throws for 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. I want to switch over to your Bears side here tonight. I guess you're the Bears fan. Sorry, I see a couple people in chat, or R.I.P. Keith's fandom for the Bears. What do you think's gonna happen with Trubisky tonight? Right, so he gets benched, earlier in the season for Foles. Foles gets hurt. Trubisky was hurt too. Now he's back. I don't know if motivation is going to make him any better. He should have been motivated to start the season. He knew he was on thin ice. That obviously didn't work out too well. And the thing that's always sort of held Mitchell Trubisky's fantasy value was his legs, and it was there a little bit to start the season, but not too much. He certainly didn't get into the end zone at all here today. What are you expecting out of the Bears quarterback tonight against the Packers also have both of their star cornerbacks in today?
Yeah, the Packers defense doesn't scare me much, and this might be a hot take, but I think Trubisky is more talented than Nick Foles.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I don't think either one's talented. How about that?
that might be fair. But certainly the ceiling is greater.
Yeah, I would agree.
And last year he really got away from the running.
He was a little bit this year. He was hurt last year for a good portion of the season. They really took that away from the playbook, I feel like.
Yep, definitely. So if it's all, and of course he's coming off the injury too now, so they may tell him to be conservative in that regard tonight as well, which would not be ideal.
Mm-hmm.
But if he comes out and he's using his legs and he can throw for 200 to 250 yards, I think he's a solid play.
In you're playing a lot of Aaron Jones. How are do you by default then have a lot of Trubisky in those lineups? I don't. How are you making that correlation?
Yeah, Robinson is the main guy I'm going to lean on. We've seen in the past that Trubisky can really just lock onto Robinson almost to a fault. So I have a ton of Robinson, and then I think that Anthony Miller and Darnell Mooney's price tags, both of them are great, and I'll be playing a ton of them as well. But yeah, it's definitely a game script where Aaron Jones has 2 TDs and the Bears are coming from behind throwing the ball a bunch.
Mm-hmm. Do you think can you play any of your favorite Bears captain tonight? Right? Is it Trubisky? Is it Robinson? Dare I go on the you can run on Green Bay, but then there's do running backs matter, right? If you're Derrick Henry or Brian Hill, I think running backs matter. Where does David Montgomery fit on that scale? I think it's more towards the Brian Hill side.
I definitely agree. He's definitely closer to Brian Hill than Derrick Henry. So no interest in Montgomery in the captain for me tonight. It's Robinson. It would be my primary captain as a Bear, and then I would go to one of the cheaper wide receivers that I mentioned, Anthony Miller or Darnell Mooney, if I was trying to go off the board even more.
All right, let's talk on the tight end position here. There are a lot of dart throws. All these teams can, throw 3 tight ends that can legitimate catch passes at you in any single game here. I think Tanyan's probably the most likely of anyone to get action. We've seen his targets over the past couple games, even with the receiving core getting a little healthier. You've got all 3 of the receivers in there tonight, but Tanyan still should get the most snaps out of them. I think he's a reasonable play, especially if you're pairing, you're playing Aaron Rodgers in the captain spot to give you some price savings to maybe do something else with the rest of your lineup. You got Jimmy Graham, who's started the season off on fire, super hit or miss, right? You've got everything from a 0 to a 2 to a 24 and everything in between. Pretty random. We did see Trubisky, and I think Foles was even in this game a little bit too. Earlier in the season, Jimmy Graham was racking up the targets. He had 2 of his better performances out there tonight. You've got them, and then you've got your dart throws and a whole bunch of other guys out there like Cole Kmet. You've got Sternberger, Mercedes Lewis. There's a variety of just random tight ends that can, if they get a touchdown, there's a reasonable chance they could be on a GPP winning lineup, especially if the game is relatively low scoring tonight. What's your overall interest at that particular position?
Yeah, I do like Tanyan. I think he probably is my, well, I guess third favorite pass catcher behind Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams. So I'll definitely have plenty of Tanyan. Graham at this point in the season is pretty much touchdown or bust. I'm not really playing him for receptions, so he has to get in the end zone to get there. We've got ownership projected about 20% right now. That's about where I think it should be. So I'll either be even with the field or a little bit underweight on that. Cole Kmet is the one that's really standing out. The price is great. The ownership is low,
I
and
think his
he's been.
ownership is going to be a little because he's the obvious like dirt cheap play to play
Yeah,
tonight. I think his ownership is going to be much higher than what's on here.
yeah, I agree with you. If anybody's looking at snap counts and things like that, he's really started to get a lot of extra run here in the last couple of weeks as they've kind of fallen. They started losing some games. They're starting to give Komet a lot more looks.
Yeah, so I would I
I
think
like it.
Komet's definitely the guy in my opinion that's basically the cheapest playable player tonight in my opinion, and just by default that player's ownership generally gets scooched up a couple more points than I think we have tonight. Kickers and defense, right? This is a game where you can play a lot of those. How do you generally play if you like the Packers defense? Do you play Do you play Crosby in those lineups? Do you think those correlate well together? If you're playing Aaron Jones a lot, obviously the defense probably plays a little bit better than Crosby does in those lineups. How are you? You know, I hate playing defenses and showdowns generally. I like offense. I like overs. It's just more fun. But this is a game where I think either side, you know, either kicker, either defense, can make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think all four of them are in play. Um, Something I've really noticed this year is kickers from the underdog team are coming in incredibly low owned. So I like Santos a lot tonight. Um, the Bears might just be able to move the ball across midfield and then have trouble from
Mm-hmm.
there, stall out, kick a lot of field goals, where Green Bay might be
Couple
finishing on
long field
touchdowns.
goals maybe too. Right? That makes a little
Yeah,
bit of
yeah, he's
sense.
got a big leg. Um, so I'm leaning Santos over Crosby. He's a little bit cheaper, and the ownership should be about half of Crosby.
Yep.
I certainly like Crosby though too because the Bears defense we've talked about is stout and they can stall the Green Bay drives as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I think both kickers are definitely in play.
Yeah, can you kicker captain? I see someone probably with there's too much star power between Jones and
Yeah,
Robinson and Rogers and Adams. I think to captain a kicker, I think those are probably wasted lineups in the long run. It does get you, you know, you get Rogers and Adams and Jones and you get all those guys in your lineups. Is something like that worth it to you?
it's not to me. You would need a game that the production is really spread out
Yeah.
and a couple of one-off people that are tough to. I mean, if you're playing the kicker and the captain, you want the stars, but then for that to work, you kind of need the stars to not have great games. So more like the Adams game that I was talking about, where it's just like 80 yards and a touchdown, rather than 110 yards and two touchdowns.
Hmm. We are doing a promotion if you guys are new to Rotogrinders and you ever wanted to check out some of the premium stuff, maybe things like the expert survey or the Showdown slate. We'll talk about some of this stuff in just a minute. You can go to rotogrinders.com/media/SNF. You'll get $5 off your first month. I always like to talk. Basically, we go over every position. I like to bring up Slate IQ, right? Because one of the main things on here, this is a premium article available for most showdown slates, specifically Sunday night, Monday night. You're going to see this every time. And big leverage today in sort of the runaway slaughter team stacks here. You know, 5-1 massive leverage over the field. Not a lot of people do it in the games that Slate IQ looked at, but the top lineups just absolutely sort of abuse those tonight. Similar to the 4-2. Is this how you're finding a lot of your lineups? Basically like 3-3. I'm definitely on a Packers victory tonight. So my lineups are. I don't have a single lineup with four Bears. I do have some with three, but most of mine are generally skewing 4-2 or the 5-1. So I like to make my teams before I look at the slate IQ, see if anything really stands out when I did it. I don't know. Am I glad that it matches slate IQ? I guess so. Sometimes I'm mad when it doesn't match it, but it's in there. What are a lot of your teams looking at tonight? And then also I want to throw out, is it okay to do like a 4-2 Bears or a 5-1 Bears. Do you think your Bears can win?
Um, I I don't think the chances are high enough that that's something I'm going to be doing tonight. I also don't. I don't know. It's probably because I like the value on the Bears side a lot better, but I'm having a hard time with the 5-1 on the Packers. I think,
You gotta take a couple luck box touchdowns on the Packers if you do that.
yeah. I mean, you're going to have to try to hit the
You're playing
Sternberger
Jamal
touchdown or
Williams
something.
and Jay Sternberger, right? Like
Yeah,
things like
exactly.
everyone's playing Jamal Williams in those 5-1s. I can pretty much tell you.
Yep, absolutely. And I would much rather lean to someone like Mooney or Miller from the Bears,
Hmm.
just because I feel like they're going to be in a trailing game script, and they're going to be in a lot of three wide receiver sets trying to catch up, and they're going to be getting the receptions that, I mean, it's just
No,
basically guaranteed production.
Packers defense could be getting the receptions.
Maybe.
That's what I like. I do like the Packers defense quite a bit. I'm playing the most defense I think than I normally do tonight. They are someone I am keyed on. But if you did want access to this, and not only this, right, like just everything in Rotogrinders Premium, rotogrinders.com/media/SNF. If you are a new subscriber, you will get $5 off and be able to look at all those things. I see there are a lot of you watching. If you guys have any questions, feel free. Post in the YouTube chat amongst yourselves, ask us questions. Players, captain, we'll talk FanDuel in just a little bit. If you got leans on the over-under, we'll give you takes on that. It's all in the expert survey, but we're more than happy to share our views on that as well. So feel free to participate in the YouTube chat. That's what sort of these little shows are for, to get you guys interacting with the hosts here on Rotogrinders. I want to go to the expert survey. This is another premium feature. That is behind the paywall here. And I guess let's go on I like to look at the betting picks here. And there's really no consensus. 2 people on the Bears, 2 people on the over, 2 people on the Packers, 2 people on the under. I see you're on the over 44.5, and I mean, Homer Bears pick you got here. Like, are you believing in this, or this just because you're wearing the Bears hat?
No, this is a pick where Green Bay is probably up 20-6 going into
Mm-hmm.
the fourth quarter, and then the Bears come back and throw a couple of garbage touchdowns. So I definitely, the Green Bay to win the game outright is a very solid stance of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I do think the Bears can kind of just throw it around a little bit in garbage time.
See a couple of you guys. I asked for questions, and you guys stormed me with questions. The top captain for Slate IQ, I don't know if we stopped doing that, the particular player, but in this specific case, right, if you're looking for position, it does, Keith is on Aaron Jones tonight. Maybe Keith, I guess I'm anti-Aaron Jones. I would be underweight in the field, and Keith is certainly over on this tonight. Slate IQ would agree with Keith on this particular thing. I just go back to they mess around with Jamal Williams too much, right? Like the game was on the line. Was it last game or the game before? And literally Aaron Jones isn't even on the field. It's Jamal Williams. It makes no sense to me why on earth your best players aren't out there when the game is on the line. I don't understand that from a coaching perspective. I'm not an NFL coach, but it's just they do all this weird stuff. I'm a little worried about Aaron Jones, but Slate IQ, it does like Aaron Jones quite a bit. Or in the flip side, if the Bears were to win this game, right, it likes David Montgomery, and you can see in the low-scoring games the defense is a smart play generally. So, are you in agreement with that?
Definitely on the running back, and definitely only on the Aaron Jones side. I'm not playing Montgomery. The defensive captain leverage was pretty surprising to me. I mean, I don't see any way that the Packers have the highest scoring.
Mm-hmm.
That the Packers defense is high enough scoring to be a captain.
Well, you're not.
I know Trubisky sucks.
You're playing them at captain, right? So I'll throw it out here. So when you get into the cheaper captains, let's pretend for the sake of.
Yeah, I mean, if it lets you fit Rodgers, Jones, and Adams, then maybe I could see.
Yeah, because you're playing that, then you're playing Aaron Jones, right? Because I think those two correlate pretty well. You're playing Rodgers. This is just the Green Bay onslaught. You're playing Adams. You've got 4650. That's more, you can throw Crosby in there, and you can pick a random, cheap bear or something. That's why you would play any of the cheap captains tonight, and I think a couple other people were asking about a cheap captain. What is a good cheap captain play for the night? Do you have one you were eyeing?
Yeah, so my builds that are exactly like that have a Bears wide receiver at captain.
Yeah, so like a Miller or
An-
Mooney.
Anthony Miller and Darnell Mooney are the two. Yep.
hmm Yeah, so that's like those get you very viable star lineups. I feel like the problem with those, right? Like if you play Miller, not a lot of people are going to be doing that in general, but then everyone has the same idea in that particular. I mean, it's Showdown. Everyone has the same idea when you do anything, but to get what's he going to be 3% in the captain, 2%?
Yep.
Really does differentiate yourself from the field. So I could get behind something like that tonight. I'm
Yeah,
trying
and I
to.
mean it's not something I'm doing in 60% of my lineups or anything. I'm talking about 15% Miller, 15% Mooney, 15% Robinson. The
Mhm.
rest Aaron Jones is probably how my lineups look tonight.
All right. I want to transition over to FanDuel. Again, guys, if you have any questions, sorry about that. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in YouTube. Anything goes about this game, props, overs, totals, whatever you want. We can help you out on that one. Let's jump over to FanDuel MVP. I think there's you can always play the random MVPs. I tend to not mess around too much with that on FanDuel. Um, I would much rather play Aaron Jones on FanDuel than I would on DraftKings tonight. So I could certainly, I'm much less anti Aaron Jones on FanDuel. I think he's fine. I certainly like Aaron Rodgers. I think he's pretty likely to be the highest scorer, specifically with the Packers having all three of their receivers. Maybe Devontae Adams doesn't get 12 targets, he just gets 9. He's going to need a touchdown, catch 7 of them, go over 100 yards, something like that. And that's a tall task against the Bears for any single player to do that. But I'm on the known quantities. I think the lowest I'd go. What am I looking at here? Let's see. Would probably be an Allen Robinson. I just don't like. I don't see a Marquez Valdez Scantling or a Jamal Williams really being the MVP. Probably not Trubisky. If Trubisky has a good game, I think probably going to Robinson. So I'd probably rather roster him at the MVP. Um, but Rodgers, Adams, Jones, Robinson would be my only MVPs on FanDuel today.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. I like Rodgers as an MVP much more than I like him on DraftKings as a captain.
And what about on FanDuel, Montgomery? I mean, I don't think Montgomery's the worst play you can run on the Packers. The only worry is, right, if the Packers get up 14 points and it's the middle of the third quarter and Montgomery hasn't gotten there, he will catch some passes. There's just not a lot of pass catching prowess out of that backfield. So I think I actually don't mind Montgomery. I think he's a reasonable play tonight on both sides.
Yeah, the reason I have trouble with it is if Montgomery has scored 2 touchdowns, I don't think this is going to be a terribly high scoring game. Which I mean, he needs to score at least 2, I would think, to be viable in the MVP. That means that Rodgers is going to be throwing a lot more, and then that just makes it really tough for Montgomery to be Rodgers. So I have a hard time seeing Montgomery get there as an MVP.
What's your preferred, Aaron Jones, Rodgers, or Adams, if you have to pick one?
I'd go Rodgers if I had to.
Yeah.
And then
I'd probably take Rodgers. I definitely throw Aaron Jones into the mix on FanDuel, though. I think that's a pretty reasonable play. Let's pretend, let's throw Aaron Rodgers in there. What does the rest of your FanDuel lineup look like? Because, hey, we got Devontae Adams, right? Of course I'm playing Devontae Adams in my Aaron Rodgers lineup, right? Why wouldn't I do that? How do you get this lineup? It's very hard to get different on FanDuel. How do you split with 40 people instead of 500 people in first place?
Yeah, Cole Kmet would be the answer for me, and I just think he's going to get more work than he has, and he's already seen an uptick in usage the last couple of games. So
yeah, so I'll pull up a Gridiron
really
IQ.
different.
This is for everyone out here. You can see Kmet last week. Well, they had the bye week, but the week before that, he actually outsnapped Jimmy Graham, and you can see on the season Kmet 36% snap percentage, but in week 10 played 68% of the snaps.
Yeah.
So you can just see the really big uptick in his usage, and you can see Jimmy Graham sort of waning because he's I'm probably like 5 or 6 years or 7 years older than Jimmy Graham, but I also didn't play tight end in the NFL, getting hit over the middle for my entire career. He's starting to slow down a little bit here. So yeah, I do like Komet. You know, if Komet gets 4 targets tonight, you're probably doing backflips, and hopefully
Yeah.
that's one of the 2 touchdowns the Bears might score tonight. So.
Yep. Exactly.
Um, all right, let's see here. I don't see. I see Cody in chat. Packers DST as captain. We did go over that a little while ago. Basically, you're doing that to get access to the full Packer stack. And I don't know if the Packers defense is going off right for like 17. That means they've got 3 or 4 sacks. They probably got a pick. Maybe they got a touchdown. It's got to be like a 24-3 game or something like that, where the Packers don't get too far out. Something like that. You're just getting access to all of the other good plays. I think I would still prefer one of the higher ceiling plays in the captain spot over on DraftKings. Don't think it's the worst idea in the world. I think there's worse things you can do at captain than play the Packers defense, though. All right, expert survey. A couple of things. Especially if you're using Lineup HQ, if you're a premium member and you want to make 20, 30, 40, 150, 300 lineups, whatever you want to do, are some of the rules, right? So things you restrict from appearing together in lineups. Yours was limiting Robinson and Montgomery together. Maybe go into a little bit more depth on why you don't want to do that.
Just lack of offensive production from the Bears is the main reason. I feel like in the trailing game script, I really don't want to play hardly any of Montgomery. I'm gonna push all of that to Robinson. I know he's a little bit more expensive, but I just see his path to meeting value is a lot easier than Montgomery's.
Mm-hmm. I like all the rules. Squirrel Patrol, Miller and Mooney, they eat into each other's production, so he's not going to have both of them in the same lineup. I think that makes some sense. Head Chopper, keeping Jimmy Graham away from his 2 wide receiver Chicago lineups, right? I think that may, like, is Trubisky going to support Robinson, Mooney, and Jimmy Graham? That's a real tall task, in my opinion, tonight, right? So that makes a lot of sense. And just your random Joe clicking lineups on his phone 10 minutes before the game, they'll do weird things like that because it zeroes out the lineup. And you really don't want to zero out a lineup in Showdown, in my opinion, most of the time, maybe on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, I pretty much never zero out a Showdown lineup. I always like to leave extra salary on the table just to be a little bit more unique. And I think tonight you can, maybe not. I think there's too much star power, especially from Adams, Jones, and Rodgers on the Green Bay side to really do anything too weird. But I do like all these rules. Cards, he only wants Trubisky plus 1 pass catcher. He's sort of like I am. He's on the Packers onslaught game. I think that makes a lot of sense if that's how you're specifically making all your lineups tonight. So all these type of rules do make sense. You can get access to those on the expert survey. What was your favorite nugget you wrote in the expert survey today?
I think, obviously my biggest stance is fading Devontae Adams.
Mm-hmm.
I think, a ton of people have seen the volume that he's gotten this season. And first of all, their receiving core is healthier. The Bears defense has completely limited wide receiver ones this year. And I just think that Aaron Jones is their better chance of success moving the ball against the Bears defense. So I would say the Adams fade is my biggest stance.
All right. If you had I could pull up the sports book. Did you look at any props or anything like that for tonight? Anything? If there's like a guy you think could probably have like a good game, or a guy you're convinced is going to have a bad game, I can pull up the DK sports book here. Who's like, obviously you like Aaron Jones a lot.
Yeah.
I can pull up his prop in just a second. But is there someone you really expect to basically outperform what the general public would expect?
Yeah, I'd be interested in the Bears receivers too.
Let's see here. Player props. Let's see. What do we want? Rushing yards. Your boy Aaron Jones. What do you think the Aaron Jones over under is for tonight?
64.5.
That is at 60.5.
Yeah.
You want the over on that?
Yeah, I'll take the over on that.
All right. David Montgomery. Let's get spicy here. Guess his over under.
He's probably right around the same.
He's at 52.5 coming back from injury there.
Yeah, that's
I wish I could get one with his. If I can get his rushing and receiving yards, because he'll rack up 4 or 5
that's
receptions in
that's
the
where I'm
game.
at on Aaron Jones too. Is I
Yeah.
think Jones will get there through the air just as much as so it might be something where he has 50 on the ground and 50 through the air.
Hmm.
And yeah, I see the same thing with Montgomery. I don't know that he's just going to run wild.
Yeah. Jones and Montgomery are both basically at 20 yards in the receiving game. Adams is at 83.5. That
Under.
sounds with everyone healthy. That's
Yeah, I'd take the under on that for sure.
that's gonna suck taking the under, but I would probably it's better juice too. I would probably take the under on that, right?
Yep.
All right. So there's a couple props for you guys here. Ricky Crenshaw wants to know Alan Lazard captain, and these were definitely popular before the MVS news. Where in case you guys just joined, Marquez Valdez Scantling is in tonight for the Packers, and Akeem Hicks is out for the Bears. So that's a big piece of the Bears defense that's out tonight. In the entire game. But a Lazard in the captain. Let's go to DraftKings. And this is again, it's sort of one of those. I think if Lazard captain, your first click has to be Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, yeah, I think you gotta do that, right?
Yeah, certainly.
All right. So I don't know what's happening here. I keep getting an error. Let's refresh. Come on, lineup HQ. All right. Let's see here. Oh, it's because I was still in the captain. All right, so let me throw Aaron Rodgers in here. What does the rest, if you had to make a Lazard captain lineup to take down a tournament, what does the rest of that look like?
Aaron Jones. I mean, I'm not on the Packers receivers hardly at all.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean,
anything I'm throwing out there, it's going
Jones
to
can
have.
catch 5, 6 passes. I'm with you
Yeah,
on
I
that.
mean
That
that's
makes
not negative. Yeah.
Yeah. You got Rodgers in there too, and then I'm probably gonna. I do like the onslaught lineups tonight. Although playing Lazard and captain does give you some extra salary, right? To maybe get a Montgomery or an Allen Robinson or a Mitchell Trubisky in there. Would you run it back, right? Because if Lazard's in your captain, you're expecting him to have at least 60 in a touch probably to make it worthwhile, and
Yeah.
the game script of that probably does favor a guy like Trubisky. Or would you forego Trubisky and try to hit like a Mooney with a Robinson, something like that instead?
Yeah, I think Robinson would be the one I'd have to have even over Trubisky just because of the sheer volume
Mm-hmm.
that Robinson can get.
Uh,
So, I mean, in a Lazard captain lineup, I'm definitely building for a Packers win and probably a pretty big Packers win.
yeah, I could even throw in the defense. I could throw in Crosby and like play like a pick a random whatever you have
Fit
salary
Robinson
left. Pick
and
pick
Miller.
Yeah, well, pick like the Bears, not the next Bears player that you have salary left for, but the next,
One
but
below.
the one below that one, just to make your lineup a little bit differently. Is how,
Yeah, so like instead of putting in Miller, go down to like Komet.
yeah, something like that. I think that would make a little bit of sense. That's of course for the large field tournaments. Just I always save a little bit of salary. Big E 222, welcome to the chat. He wants to know Aaron Jones at MVP on FanDuel.
Yeah.
Yes, I am much more apt to play Aaron Jones on FanDuel today than I am on draft. Although I'm softening up on Aaron Jones. I think I'm going to add a little bit more Aaron Jones on DraftKings by the time I gets down here.
Yeah, I was on Aaron Jones before Hicks was ruled out, so now I'm I might just go all in on him.
Yeah.
I might lock him.
Let's see here again, guys. If you want to participate and ask us any questions on the slate, feel free to post in the YouTube. There are approximately well over 300 of you watching on all the other different ways you can watch here on Rotogrinders. So please feel free to ask any questions to either me or Keith. Anything at all to do with this game. I'm going to give us about, I don't know, 5 to 6, 7 minutes before we probably head on out of here and finalize our own lineups tonight. If you guys missed it, the roster construction from Slate IQ kind of looks back at all the games where you've got one big favorite and sort of a low-scoring game. That's the general thought of tonight's game from Vegas. That's a big thing that goes into Slate IQ. What wins those, according to Slate IQ, is sort of the onslaught games. The 5-1 with the biggest leverage, the 4-2. In some weird, crazy world, I think you can probably make, a Chicago one like that. But a Chicago isn't going to win by 9 points. I think if they win this game, so that would lean to a different roster construction. But if you believe in a Packers win and that Vegas is correct, the 4-2, the 5-1 looks to be, a pretty good build, at least looking back on history. Would you agree with that, Keith?
Yep, I do agree. And I think the difference between the 5-1 and the 4-2 is whether you think the Bears can kind of score some points in garbage time. I mean, I definitely do, and I think most people do think that the Packers are going to be leading this game going into the fourth quarter. So it's whether the Bears can have any success in the fourth quarter.
Cash game captain on DraftKings. I have the Blitz. It is throwing Jamal Williams into the captain because it gets you. The Blitz always loves David Montgomery, so it basically Jamal Williams at so cheap. One, it likes Jamal Williams, and then it gets you all the good players in the game, right? So I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. Williams is guaranteed to get, 5 to 10 touches. I think you could do worse than that. I generally prefer a little bit better of a player in my captain spot tonight. Where would you throw the dart on cash games?
I think, unless it restricted you way too much, I think Rodgers in the captain is probably where I would lean for cash.
Mm-hmm. I think Rodgers. I like one of the big dogs. Rodgers, Adams, or Jones probably would be mine in the captain. I understand the Jamal Williams lineup though, because it gets you Rodgers and Trubisky and Montgomery and Allen Robinson, Devontae Adams, right? I think like that lineup it gets you all the good plays. I don't think that's a bad one. So
yeah, the difference between Rodgers in the captain and Williams in the captain is it's really Mason Crosby over David Montgomery. I mean, I'd much rather play Rodgers with Crosby than Williams in the captain, and just so I can get Montgomery.
Yeah, I think Crosby's I would prefer to spend up on one of the good players. I think at the captain spot tonight. Let's see, any Trubisky captain for either of you tonight? I don't have like 150. I have like 10 on DraftKings and a couple on FanDuel, but I do not have a Trubisky captain lineup. Do you?
I'm only playing 20 tonight because of the show, so yeah, I'm not getting the Trubisky either.
What is do you think it's bad? It's going to be different.
I don't think it's bad. If, like you said, if I had 150, I would certainly do it like 5-10% of the time, just because we've seen a Trubisky in the past that can run for 60 yards and throw for 250. The Green Bay defense doesn't scare me that much. It's just whether Trubisky can be that guy ever again, or is he just toast?
So. Yeah, Daryl want to know: does the Blitz have Montgomery as a good player? The Blitz loves David Montgomery. I have not fallen for that trap anymore. But I don't like you always be like, oh, David, it's a good spot against the Packers for David. You're always like that, and then it's just he's horrible. So I don't know about that.
And another huge problem is if the Bears get inside the 5-yard line, it's just going to Montgomery 3 times, and he's probably going to fall short of the goal line even in those 3 attempts. But he definitely gets to work on the goal line to where he could easily pay off. But I'm with you. I'm in the David Montgomery's not very good camp.
Yeah. I have some Montgomery teams tonight. I don't love him for a play, but he's not. I don't think he's not a great play. He's not a good play, but he's not a bad play.
Yeah.
I guess if I was trying to rate everything tonight, so
the Bears' offensive line troubles this year really have me off of him too. Whitehair is back. He's been out for a couple weeks. I think he was back last week too, but they're getting one of their better linemen back. But Daniels is still out, another one of their linemen, and the rest of them aren't very good.
So we got a couple other ones. Underground Asylum. Again, if you have any questions, get them in right now. We'll probably be out of here in just a couple of minutes. Mooney or Lazar tonight? It's tough. I'm taking Mooney. I'm saving money, and I think I probably get more targets. There are more bad targets, but I'll take more bad targets, I think, pretty easily. Mooney's look pretty good. and definitely can connect on a deep ball every now and then.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. We haven't even seen Mooney's ceiling game. There's been several times he's been open
Oh
down the
yeah.
middle of the field, and both quarterbacks have just missed him by 5 yards, and he's got 2 yards of separation. Would have easily walked into the end zone. So if he can actually get a quarterback to put that ball on him, then I mean, he smashes on one play.
James Johnson, Goddard or Tanyan for a classic? That was Goddard for sure, without question. If those are like your only choices and you're playing the Sunday Monday slate, I would take Goddard for sure. Montgomery's ownership 45%. I would probably be underweight. I know I'm underweight a little bit, but I do have some. I'm probably at like 20 or 30%, something like that. Clint Ritchie wants to know, does Lamar Miller have any chance at 5 touches? Barring a David Montgomery injury, I would say no, correct?
Correct.
All right. Kirk wants to know, correlate Mooney and the Bears try for the double dip.
Uh, Mooney doesn't return kicks. Miller has been returning punts lately. And I mean, they have Harris, or they did until he fumbled last week. I'm not sure if he's lost his job or not, but after Harris fumbled last week, Miller was the one returning the kick or the punts. I mean,
Luis Lopez, best way to use the Opti over at Rotogrinders for showdowns. It really depends on your game type. For cash games, I basically just set all my rules neutral, build like 20 or 30 lineups. If there's a guy on 100% of all of them, I'm generally going to make sure that guy's in my lineup. If you're playing tournaments, I would really start looking in the player groups, because for Showdown and the main slate, right, you use the build rules and you use your like stack tools, right? That's where you get into it on the big slates. But you really have to have player groups. You can get into 20, 30 different player groups correlating to who's in your captain, and if you have Trubisky, where you do this. You really have to learn how to do the rules for Showdown. I make a lot more rules if I was using the optimizer for Showdown than I do on the main slate. The main slate, I barely make any rules. It's all in the stacks tools where I spend all my time. So learn how to do the player groups. Think about your lineups sort of like the expert survey, right? Because if you go down here, you can read every week what players will you restrict from appearing together, right? So Squirrel Patrol, he doesn't want Anthony Miller and Darnell Mooney in the same lineup. So you would just set a rule over here to not have those two in the same lineup. So that's where I would spend my time if you're using the optimizer and you're trying to do any sort of MME or things like that.
yeah, just to add on to that, one rule that I always like to do is if I'm playing a quarterback and the captain, I want two pass catchers with him.
Yep.
So you build a group of all the Green Bay pass catchers, and then over there you can select Aaron Rodgers captain as the player, and then set the builder to give you two in every lineup. And I do it like 2 to 4. Like I don't mind if I have.
Yep.
And I'll include like Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones in that group too, because they can both catch passes.
Two more questions. We're going to get out of here. Jermaine Dorsey, Komet or Mercedes Lewis for a FanDuel punt? I think we're both going to agree Komet pretty easily.
Komet by a mile.
Lazard or MVS?
It depends if MVS is healthy. If you think MVS is healthy and a full go, then I would lean MVS. But otherwise, Lazard.
I would agree. I legit would flip a coin. I think they're literally 50-50 tonight. Daryl Hodgkins gave up FanDuel showdowns. He's on DK. Exposure to kickers or defense? I think we both like. I like the Packers D quite a bit, and I like either kicker. I think a reasonable amount out there, and I generally avoid those guys on showdowns. But tonight, I think it makes quite a bit of sense.
Yep. I agree. And I'm playing a little bit of Bears defense too, even though I think they get beat. We've seen them just force turnovers. They're just a big play defense. They always have event plays. Yeah. Part of it's because their offense struggles so much, and it's really like the only way they can score sometimes. But so I don't mind throwing the Bears defense in there, even against a Packers onslaught.
All right, I think that's going to do it for tonight's showdown slate. We're going to get out of here and finalize our lineups. Again, if you were looking to access to Lineup HQ, to the Expert Survey, to the Showdown Slate, to Gridiron IQ, to anything else, to everything we do on Rotogrinders, and you've never been a subscriber before, for the first month, you can get $5 off rotogrinders.com/media/SNF for Sunday Night Football. We'll get you $5 off your first month here at Rotogrinders. Thanks to everybody for watching. Keith, always a blast doing these shows with you, dude. We're going to get on out of here. And everyone, have a good night.